It's weird to think that at some point there were no things all of us are so used to. Everything we have in our apartment, kitchen, toaster, door, the cursed monkey paw, even a simple bed. Kids nowadays get surprised that their parents are older than Google. For them, it always existed. It's even weirder to imagine that some of these inventions are accidental. For example, popsicles. It wasn't invented by a company or a chef. Instead, the creator of popsicles is an 11-year-old boy from 1905. The boy was simply mixing water with powdered flavors, and then he forgot all about it and went to sleep. When he woke up on a chilly morning, he found the drink not only frozen, but delicious. The boy's name was Frank Epperson, and it's important. He patented the treat and called it Epsicle. Then his kids begged him to rename it to Popsicle. Okay, so popsicles are not that impressive or important. How about penicillin? The most impressive thing about it is not that it was invented by accident, but that it wouldn't really be possible to invent in the modern days due to better technologies. So, Alexander Fleming, a lab technician infamous for being careless and inattentive, left for a 2-week vacation. When he returned, he began to sift through petri dishes. A staphylococcus plate was accidentally contaminated, and this accidental contamination stopped the growth of staphylococcus. I want to emphasize how crazy that is. Before penicillin, there was no effective treatment for many diseases, such as pneumonia or gonorrhea. People could die from a single cut that poisoned their blood. And the cure that changed the world was invented by a man who left for vacation and didn't properly check anything before going away. Could you imagine if Fleming was more careful? Medicine would be completely different. To be fair, people even in ancient Egypt applied moldy bread to their wounds, but we wouldn't have antibiotics at all, if not for one little mistake. The next one is arguably as important. It'll become apparent why soon. During World War II, Dr. Harry Coover was part of the team working on chemicals known as cyanoacrylates to create a clear plastic for precise gun sights. Now, pause the video and comment on what you think he accidentally invented. Or don't comment, but still pause and think. You'll never guess. Okay. Get ready for it. He invented superglue. Let's talk about how. Basically, they realized that these chemicals were incredibly sticky, which in turn made it hard to work with them. They reacted especially strongly to moisture, which exists in almost everything. So, they moved on to other chemicals. Then, 6 years later, in 1951, he was working with Kodak engineers and came upon the same chemical again. This time, he realized its potential. In 1958, superglue was ready, and the most surprising part of it was that Coover became a celebrity. On the show I've Got a Secret, he raised the host off the ground using only 1 drop of superglue. Later, of course, they started to use the chemical to treat wounds. By spraying it on the wounds, it stopped bleeding instantly. It was used further by surgeons. It helped rejoin veins and arteries, stop bleeding during surgery, and it's even used by dentists. Let's go back to the 19th century. All previous inventions are life-changing. This one too, and I wonder what would happen if this wasn't invented. Making fire is probably the most important invention of all time, an invention that helped us truly evolve. It probably was an accidental invention too, but we can't know for sure. We can know for sure about the creation of matches. It's hard to imagine that it was pretty hard to create fire before that. John Walker, a chemist, was conducting an experiment. He mixed several chemicals and materials and then put it on a stick when it dried. He scraped it against the floor to remove it, and to his surprise, it burst into flames. He realized that it was something special, and created several of these sticks to show his colleagues. Samuel Jones, who was one of the observers, quickly realized the commercial potential and started a business selling matches named Lucifer. I guess the worst thing that came out of it was that it dramatically increased smoking. Of course, these were incredibly dangerous. They were smelly and could burst into flames a bit too much. In 1844, in Sweden, a safety match was finally invented. You know how in westerns Clint Eastwood would light a match from any surface? Well, that was actually true before safety matches were invented that could only light up from the package itself. If you think about it, Matchbox is an incredibly useful package. It contains matches and lights them up. We don't think how incredibly inventive something is until we think really deep about it. The world is full of wonders and results of human ingenuity. We often forget about it, seeing all the horrible things happening. Humans may be imperfect beings who keep making the same mistakes despite best efforts to learn, but we're also capable of acts of beauty and creation. Anyway, let's talk about cookies. Ruth Wakefield was a famous baker who owned the Toll House. The legend says that she was making chocolate cookies and ran out of baker's chocolate, so she took a Nestle chocolate bar instead, broke it into chunks, and hoped that melted chocolate and dough would mix well together. And as we all know, it did. But probably is nothing more than a legend. Food writer Carolyn Wyman wrote that Ruth Wakefield wasn't an amateur, and the invention of chocolate chip cookies was not only deliberate, but a result of meticulous testing. In any way, I salute you, Ruth Wakefield. Another food product that we can assume was somehow accidental is cheese. We don't really have any hard facts about it, but there's a huge chance that it wasn't on purpose. The gene that allows us to drink milk evolved long after we started eating fermented milk products, so what happened? People probably stored milk for children. Even lactose-intolerant kids apparently can consume it as babies, and cats can't, so if you want to know more, look at our cat video. So how did cheese happen? I'm cheesed to tell you. First, a bacteria is introduced that eats the lactose and, well, the lactic acid comes out. Then, a rennet introduced a set of enzymes that separates milk into solid curd and liquid whey. Where does the rennet come from? Mammal stomachs. You know what also was made out of mammal stomachs? Containers to store liquids. Boom! Is your mind blown? If yes, then give us a like and don't forget to subscribe. If not, then also give us a like and don't forget to subscribe. Sorry if this was a bit cheesy. And the craziest part? Someone had to actually try it. I can imagine people seeing rotten milk turning into something they've never seen again and eating it. This person did the world a favor, and I think after he ate the cheese, he said, cheese to meet you? Okay, I'll stop. We talked a lot about food today. Are you getting hungry? I am. So let's talk about preparing food. Microwave is a staple of modern cooking, and as you've guessed, was made completely on accident. Percy Spencer was working on radar magnetrons, more precisely how to mass produce them. Radar magnetrons are a sort of electric whistle that creates electromagnetic waves instead of sounds. Of course, as with many other accidental inventions, it was supposed to help with war. Spencer was focusing on magnetron tubes' power level. Then Spencer put a hand in his pocket where his peanut cluster bar was completely melted. Just to make it clear, melting peanuts is way harder than chocolate. To test it further, Spencer put an egg underneath the tube, and it promptly exploded, covering his face with egg. Ah, science. And the next day, he brought some corn, and shared the first microwave popcorn with his colleagues. Almost poetic. Was it safe? Well, Spencer didn't know. Times were different back then, much more wild. That's why I said earlier that penicillin probably wouldn't be invented today. First commercial microwave was introduced in 1947, just a year after Spencer's tests. It was very different, weighed almost 750 pounds, and cost almost $2,000. Microwaves really reached the hearts of people in 1967, when they weren't so heavy and expensive. Our next fact is... I forgot. Let me check my notes. I wrote it down on a post-it note. Oh yeah, it's Post-it notes. Dr. Spencer Silver was working for 3M and was tasked to create stronger adhesive for the aerospace industry. As you've guessed, he failed. Dr. Silver managed to create the opposite, very weak adhesive. And then, the project was forgotten for many years and deemed as a failure. 6 years later, Art Fry, new product development researcher at 3M, was singing at church and wondering if he could have a bookmark that would stick to the page but not damage the paper. He remembered about Dr. Silver's adhesive and used it, and realized that they were not only great bookmarks, but, well, notes. 3M began to use them internally and slowly began to realize that they struck gold. At least it was the same color. It was yellow because that was the only scrap paper they had. Then it became a signature color. At first, the product wasn't popular, but it was turned around by a great marketing campaign. From a product deemed a failure to a smash hit. We had a lot of accidental inventions that were intended for warfare, but turned out to be useful for other things. There's one invention that is the complete opposite and probably an indirect cause for all other inventions. Gunpowder. The origin of gunpowder is murky, but it's said that Taoist alchemists were first to create gunpowder, and it was a byproduct of them trying to create an elixir of life that would cure all diseases and lead to immortality, and they created the opposite. Full history is extensive and endlessly fascinating, so comment if you want us to create a video about it. The last fact is not very important in general, but important for me as a Nintendo fan. Kirby is one of the most recognizable characters in all gaming, selling over 50 million copies of various games, and it's completely understandable. He's a pink, round guy who vacuums everyone inside of him, and of course, his initial design was nothing more than a placeholder. The round character was easy to create and animate, but then the creators fell in love with him and kept the initial design, which not only created a famous game character, but skyrocketed the career of Masahiro Sakurai, a famous game designer. There are two interesting things about this design. First of all, do you know what a tadpole person is? This is how preschoolers draw people, a round figure without a torso, just like Kirby. Second is the famous Kiki and Booba. Two different shapes, and you have to give one the name Kiki and the other Booba. Put the video on pause and name them. Most likely, you call the sharp one Kiki and the squishy one Booba. Kirby is definitely a Booba. That's all, folks. Like and subscribe. More videos coming soon.